Good morning from Kansas City. Welcome to SportsBeat Live, our weekly gathering where we talk Royals with the people in the media who know them best and with you. We got Lynn Worthy here, beat writer for the Star. Hey, Lynn, how you doing?
Doing all right. How you doing?
Great, great. It's good to see you.
Yeah. Actually, in person, no social distance. How about that?
It's incredible. It really is. Producer extraordinaire Beth and I were talking before the show that we think the last time that we had a conversation in the studio was during the Big 12 tournament in 2020, the day it was canceled. I think Sam Mellinger, who will be joining us here shortly, and Vahe Gregorian and I, we came down here and put together a show like what's going to happen now. You were at spring training.
Yep.
Because I think they had maybe another day or so of spring training before that got canceled. Do you remember?
Well, I'm trying to think exactly which day it was, but I know I was in spring training. I was just in. Actually, the first thing that popped in my mind was I remember the last day of spring training that they had before everything stopped. And I remember there was a game that was scheduled to be played, the spring training game. I think it was against the Mariners, and we were waiting to see what was going to happen. And the thing that stands out is that it was the first game of the spring training that year that Adalberto Mondesi was in the lineup. And so, yeah, it comes full circle.
Yes, it does. I believe Adalberto Mondesi is going to consume much of our conversation today, as he has throughout the year on our Zoom calls earlier. But listen, we want to take your questions and comments. Please send them along. And we also, before we really get into it, want to thank our sponsor, the University of Kansas Health System. You'll hear from them later in the show. And as I said, Sam Mellinger expected to join us sometime during the show. He got held up, not in traffic, but on the phone. So, all right. There's no other lead story for the Royals these days other than Mondesi. It's been the case all year. Let's start with the news first, though, Lynn, before we get into a deeper dive of Mondesi. What happened on Sunday, and what's the forecast for Mondesi?
Well, on Sunday he played 6 innings and then came out of the game. And again, it was one of those: is this a maintenance thing? Because he had the day off on Saturday, and they were talking about they were going to make sure that they gave him time because he wasn't full. I mean, I guess they didn't say it, but I think the gist was he wasn't 100%, but he was coming back from the hamstring. So they were going to ease him back in.
Right.
And after the game, Mike Matheny said, well, he felt something in his side, and that's why he came out, and he was still getting evaluated. And then so Monday over at Dayton Moore's CU in the Major Leagues youth camp, he made the announcement that, yeah, he's going to have to go on the injured list again, and Ryan O'Hearn would be coming up.
So let's see. If I've got my injuries straight, it was the final game of spring training where he suffered the original oblique injury, right?
Yep.
And that was on the right side, the right oblique.
Yep, right oblique.
Missed 45 games.
Correct.
Returned, and then on the Sunday night game, I forgot what it was against. I can't remember who it was against, but Sunday night game, he makes a terrific play in the field in the late innings and tweaks a hamstring.
I believe it was a Monday night game.
Oh, Monday, you're right. It was
Memorial Day against
right.
the Pirates on ESPN.
That's right, on ESPN. And so he tweaks his hamstring, and all of a sudden he's the first batter up in like the 8th, right? Bottom of the 8th, and he ain't at bat. He's not in the batter's box. Someone else is, and so you think, oh, what the heck happened? Oh, it turns out he tweaked his hamstring on that, on a really nice play to end the charge and a hard throw to get the runner to end the 7th, or the Pirates' top of the 8th. So he misses another handful of games, comes back, and does something. I mean, in every game that he played, it seems like in every game he's played, he's done something tremendous. It's unbelievable how
his first at bat back after the hamstring, he hits a home run. And it was center field, 400 and I want to say almost 50 feet. His first at bat back. So it was. I think Sam was there that day, and I remember in the press box just looking at him and being like, "Really?"
Yeah.
His first at bat
back.
What a freak. And I think he's only played 10 games this season, and I'm trying to, and I don't have the numbers in front of me. Obviously, I want to say he's got 4 I'm trying to think, is it 4 home runs? 6
I think it's
home
4,
runs?
right?
Yeah.
4 home runs.
In just 10 games. You know, I mean, the day that he got hurt, like I say, he only played 6 innings. I think he had 2 doubles in that game.
Right.
You know, and he's made these plays in the field, and that ESPN game, he had the home run and the sort of strut out of the box with the bat flip, and I mean, he's packed a lot into those 10 games, but the team has played 70. So.
Yeah. So, and then of course in one of the Red Sox games, he hits the 464-foot home run, which is matches the longest, or one of the longest anyway, since StatCast started.
It's the 4th longest by a Royal since StatCast, and it was. I forget when the other ones were, but it was the longest one in a while.
and I read this in the Royals post-game notes, I think from Sunday, and look, the Royals do a great job with these post-game notes. They find these little nuggets. Mondesi, if you go back to the final 6 games of the previous season, 2020, Mondesi has 17 extra base hits in 16 games. And over a 16-game stretch, only one other player in Royals history has done that, and that was George Brett. So 17 extra base hits in his last 16 games. Unfortunately for the Royals, 6 of those were in 2020 and only 10 of them this year. They are 6-4 when he plays. They're a 600 team when he plays, 26-34 when he doesn't.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I think I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. I think for fans, it's frustrating, and I would say for the Royals, it's frustrating too. And then even just Dayton talking about the other day, he was talking about just how bad they feel for him because obviously this takes a toll on him being in and out of the lineup, always having these injuries, always having people questioning what's going on with him and why it's always him who's hurt and who's in and out. And obviously everybody recognizes the potential. I mean, we just talked about the numbers and anecdotally just the way, whether it's the bat flips or the home runs or just the tape measure shots. I mean, like there's a lot there and everybody sees that, but he just can't stay healthy for whatever reason.
No, and a couple things. None of these injuries, at least the ones this year, are surgery requiring type of injuries. He didn't break a bone. He didn't, they're soft tissue type, oblique, hamstring. We can get it maybe when Sam gets here, get into the column that Sam wrote about this. But the other thing I wanted to ask you about specifically is when Mondesi's out of the lineup, the ripple effect in Royals lineup because of that. Positions change. The batting order certainly is affected by it. It impacts the Royals in a pretty big way.
Yeah, I mean, just the other day, he was, you talk about your shortstop who was also batting, I believe, cleanup the other day. And, a legitimate cleanup hitter. A guy who hits those home runs, a guy who is a switch hitter, a guy who's going to hit you for extra base hits, is going to drive in runs. And then also, of course, the speed on top of that. Leads the majors in stolen bases whenever he's healthy, it seems like. So, yeah, he's, and you take him out, and it probably means Nicky Lopez starts at shortstop, or sometimes they might throw Hanser Alberto in there. And, it just changes everything in terms of that defense up the middle when you had Nicky and Mondesi. I think it was Friday night's game against the Red Sox where the two of them more or less won you the game between their defense and their offense because Nicky had, I think it was 2 hits. Mondesi had a couple of hits. They both made some ridiculous plays in the field. And, they swing a game with that defense up the middle. And you always hear about defense up the middle. You think about Salvi, Mondesi, Nicky, and then Michael A. Taylor, who I haven't looked recently, but I know he was one of the top 4 or 5 guys in defensive runs saved and a bunch of different defensive metrics up until at least a couple of weeks ago. That's what you're looking for defensively, at least, and you just haven't had that very much this season.
Yeah, look, we don't think of Nicky Lopez as a shortstop. He's a second baseman, right? And Whit Merrifield is a second baseman and has to play some outfield, or Hunter Dozier gets moved around, and then the batting order, right? You're taking Mondesi's hot bat. He's hitting 361, slashing 373, and then 830. It was something ridiculous, right? You take him out of the lineup, and you at least looks like tonight Ryan O'Hearn's going to be your first baseman, who they just called up, right, from Omaha. We don't know that the lineup's potentially the lineup's not out yet, but he's the roster replacement for Mondesi, and I hope Ryan O'Hearn can continue as he was hitting the heck out of the ball in Omaha. But the lineup is simply weaker. And look, you had a good story that's posted. It's on the Stars website now, posted this morning about Dayton Moore spoke to this, and we'll hear from Dayton Moore later in the show. But Dayton Moore spoke to this yesterday to a group of reporters that the team that the Royals envisioned for this year, the one that was, based on the players returning, but also the offseason acquisitions of Andrew Benintendi and Carlos Santana and Michael A. Taylor, it also included having Mondesi at shortstop and the Benintendi's injured now, and it just hasn't been through 70 games the team that the Royals envisioned.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, because I think one of the questions that I asked was, sort of geared towards the idea of they wanted to, and Dayton said this for a long time, they wanted to try and win at the same time as they're developing, these younger guys, whether it's the pitchers or some of the position players who are transitioning, is the phrase that Dayton likes to use a lot, into the major leagues. And so they try to do both. They want to win. I mean, you look at the offseason, they had win-now moves with Santana, Mike Minor, Andrew Benintendi, experienced guys who've won. It wasn't just like, okay, we're going to bring up whoever and trot them out there. I shouldn't say whoever, but bring up somebody from the minors and trot them out there every day and just let them learn. It wasn't that. They decided we're going to go get some veteran guys, proven guys, and we're going to try and win at the majors while we're bringing these other guys up. And so I was asking whether or not he had any sort of second thoughts or, questioned that approach at all, and he said no. And he said really a lot of it was they felt like those guys, they've gotten what they expected out of those guys, and the combination of those guys and the returning players is why they thought they would still be able to win and transition these other guys. Some of the returning players have underperformed, and now you've got injuries. You got Mondesi's not there, you got Benintendi's not there, and you're transitioning these young guys, and we've seen the growing pains there. So it's just, it's still 70 games in, so things can happen, but it's just not what they were hoping for in terms of the full combination of things coming together.
And they're not out of anything, right? They're 32-38. This is a team that, won 16 of its first 25 games, first place at the end of April. Well, since then, of course, one 11-game losing streak and then another stretch of 11 out of 12 losses. But somewhere in there as well, they also got on a little roll again. And anyway, it's just not out of the realm that this team could be playing meaningful baseball in the second half of the season. And don't you think that's what Dayton's, at least the organization's, thinking in those terms?
Yeah, and he said flat out, we're not in the mode of just going all in on development this season and abandoning winning for 2021. That was his response. So they're still hoping to be able to do both, because obviously they're going to transition some of these guys, and whether that means starting or we've seen the last week Jackson Kowar out of the bullpen, that's still going to be part of the plan because that's the plan for the future. But they're not giving up on being competitive this season, especially if you get some guys healthy or you get some guys playing up to the way that they had expected, based on their past performances.
Yeah. What would going all in on development look like? What do you think?
I think that would mean, even with the struggles, you bring up Daniel Lynch and have him in the rotation on a regular basis. You start probably Jackson Kowar. I think it would be more just having these guys pitch every fifth day. And I'm not sure if that actually would be feasible this year just because of the innings limits and the things that we talked about all offseason and spring training. But I think it would be more, if guys struggle, then you keep trotting them out there through the struggles. I think it would be more like what we saw 18 and 19 with certain guys, where it was like, okay, they're not quite what they're going to be in the big leagues, but you're playing them every day so that you can get to that point.
How might Bobby Witt Jr. fit into that idea?
I don't see it happening soon. Dayton spoke to that yesterday, too, that there's still the plan, at least right now, still includes him going through AAA before he gets to the majors. And right now he's at AA. And he's made some strides recently at AA. But I think they still want to see him do a little bit more.
Okay, let's hear from Royals general manager Dayton Moore. Lynn Worthy had the camera rolling yesterday when Dayton Moore was at the CU in the major leagues at the Youth Baseball Academy. So this is Dayton Moore on Monday.
I mean, unfortunately, it looks like we're going to have to put him on the IL again. This time it's a left oblique. I mean, he's just devastated, and we just feel so bad for him. We're obviously a much different team when he's on the field, and to replace him, we're going to call up Brian O'Hearn. He's in great shape. I mean, our performance science people, our medical team, all the great folks at University of Kansas Health Systems, everybody, Doc Key, Doc Nolan, I mean, everybody has had hands-on, with Mondi, and it's just one of those deals. I mean, he'll get through it eventually. It's just he's had a lot of setbacks, with his body. We always have to prepare for injuries in this game. When you lose a player of his talent level, and obviously plays a premium position, it hurts a little bit more, but we can't make excuses, and we've got to figure out how we can get better and look for solutions. And so it's hurtful that we don't get a chance to watch him play more at this point in time, but we're going to remain optimistic that he's going to continue to do whatever's necessary, which he always has. He's always been very compliant, does whatever we ask him to do. It's just one of those things. I mean, I wish it was different, but it's not. It's unpredictable, as you know, until you start getting through those initial phases of the rehab process and how they respond. But Nick doesn't believe it's as serious as the previous one. And how they respond.
Well, two things. First of all, welcome, Sam. Good to see you, buddy.
Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you made it. The other thing is, I think every baseball interview should be conducted with kids playing baseball in the background. I love that.
The world would be a better place.
Wouldn't
for
it?
sure.
That was cool. All right, so you just heard from Dayton Moore, and it was about Adalberto Mondesi. Sam, Lynn and I have been talking about it for the first 20 minutes or so. There it is. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we've gone over the kind of the nuts and bolts of it, and how it affects the lineup, how it affects defense. You've got a column today that's posted. I want to know from you what let's just talk a little deeper about Mondesi and his future, and whether he's a player that can be counted upon.
He's not.
That's the short answer.
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
no.
They can't trust him. How could they, right? He played a full season last year, 59 out of the 60 games. But,
Yeah.
What's the number? Is it 110 games? Something like that he hasn't played more than since he was 17 years old. And, he's been on the DL or IL, I think it's 6 times in 4 years. I think that's right.
That sounds about right. I mean, 3 this year, so.
And and this is just, you couldn't make this story up. If you said that this is what happened to arguably the most important player, on the roster, people wouldn't believe you. 10 games, he's finished 7, 3 IL stints now. And the frustrating thing, and Dayton just said it in that clip about premium position, and if this is an outfielder, you can absorb that a little bit better. If this is a pitcher, you can absorb it. If it's a first baseman, you can find guys to play that position. But a shortstop, Nicky Lopez is okay. He can get you through a week, but I think he gets exposed if, the longer that goes on. Bobby Witt Jr. will be up at some point. They say he can play big league shortstop, but it's just, look, they built this team in the last couple off seasons. They've thought Salvador Perez, Bobby Witt Jr., and Mondesi, let's get them on the field together as long as possible and surround those 3 top shelf, high ceiling talents with as much, Hunter Dozier when he's right, Benintendi when he's healthy, just kind of supporting players, enough pitching, and that can be a playoff team. That's the core of a playoff team. But Salvador Perez is doing his part. He's on the best stretch of his career. Bobby Witt Jr. appears to be on his way.
Yeah.
I'd expect him in Omaha. You probably know more about this than I do, but I expect him to be in Omaha fairly soon. But Mondesi, they just can't trust him. They got to figure out if this is preparation, if it's, he's not doing the maintenance. Is his body just not capable of 162 games? Does he have the worst luck of anybody in professional sports? They got to figure out an answer and tailor that. The good news, I think, is Nick Kenny is really good. They've got a good medical staff, but they've got to zero in on this because it is a huge issue.
Yes, I mean Lynn and I were saying it's been a crazy season anyway, but there are only 6 games under 500, and he's missed all but 10 games.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to wonder what this team would be if he were, if he'd played 65 of the 70 games.
Yeah, I mean, they're 6-4. I know it's a small sample size, which is the point. But they're 6-4 in games that he's played. Now I haven't done the math on games that he's finished. That would be somewhat less as well. But he is just a dynamic talent. And look, it's only the last 22 games, I think, is the number of last season, and then 10 of this season. I mean, that's less than a fifth of a normal season. But it appears that when he's been on the field since the beginning of last September, that we've got what the Royals have envisioned. The plate discipline is still not there. I think even this year, it's 1 walk and 11 strikeouts, I think is the number. But all that being said, his hand-eye is ridiculous. Strength is ridiculous. Power, ridiculous. Speed. I mean, he is a game-changing. He's the most talented guy that they've had on the big league roster since Carlos Beltran. Like, I think that is just a fact. I think, Lorenzo Cain might be second, but he is different. But, the thing I've started to think about him is he can really play when he can play.
Yeah, well, I think I was talking to a friend of mine who's not from Kansas City, and who was asking me, like, so what's the deal with this Mondesi guy? I was like, and I said, yeah. I said, well, he's basically Francisco Lindor that you saw with the Indians when he's healthy. I was like, he's just never healthy. I said he's that switch hitter, the speed, the power, that type of defense. I said he's Lindor when he's healthy. He's just never healthy.
Yep.
Is he? Did I do it again?
As you should.
I apologize.
We're always honest on this
You're
show.
speaking for the fans. Royals Nation with that sigh right there.
Is he trade bait now?
I would hate to trade him just because I think you'd be selling so low. If somebody's willing to trade him on the value of 145 games a year, sure. But I wouldn't do that. Think about what the Royals, was it Tim Hill? Is that all they gave up for Franchy Cordero?
Yeah.
In that deal.
And they got more than just Franchy Cordero. They got Bolaños too. That was the same deal with Bolaños.
Yeah. And Cordero is not nearly, the talent or the position that Mondesi is. I wouldn't want to do that. He's and I know I wrote this. I'm like whatever, but he is far too talented to walk away from or give up on, and he's far too unreliable to trust that he can be in the lineup. Like I don't know what the solution is there.
Yeah, and I question sort of like you what you get in return. And I heard somebody saying this the other day, and I was like, as I heard it, I was like, yeah, that's a something to consider. Is Benintendi had more of a track record of production in the major leagues and success.
Yeah,
and they gave up Cordero. Clearly was a top prospect, but then it was like these minor leaguers who were low level that you weren't really sure what you were getting out of any of those guys. And this is for a guy with a track record, so you're going to get. So if you were to deal him now, you're getting below that, probably well below that for whatever you're going to get on the return. Yeah,
a trade would just be basically, at this point, just complete frustration of just I don't want to deal with this headache anymore, and that's not how you get better. I don't think.
All right, let's take a break. Let's hear from our sponsor, the University of Kansas Health System.
The Kansas City Royals lineup is backed up by the region's strongest team in healthcare, the University of Kansas Health System. We both suit up with one goal in mind: to win. The University of Kansas Health System, official healthcare provider of the Royals.
We're back on SportsBeat Live talking Royals with Sam Mellinger and I was going to say Vahe Gregorian, but that is not the case. No. Lynn Worthy is here. And all right, so we're talking Adalberto Mondesi, of course. And my next question about Mondesi is he the Royals' shortstop of the future, given that he can't stay on the field and that position is so important? And as you and I talked about earlier, Lynn, when he's not on the field at shortstop, he impacts. There's a ripple effect that impacts so many other positions that if he's an outfielder, you might not have that same ripple effect.
You know, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I think they still believe in him. You know, they want to believe in him. And I always, at least up till this point, I got the sense that third base was where Bobby Witt Jr. was eventually going to end up and be side by side with Mondesi. I'm just not sure if they can stick with that plan, and I don't know that it was necessarily a set in stone plan. I think it was maybe just they were preparing for that eventuality. I just don't know if you can keep preparing for that eventuality. I just don't know if that's going to be the case.
To me, I would think that decision. If I was Dayton and JJ and like the front office, just leave that decision up to Nick, Kenny, and sort of performance science, and just because what I don't know is, well, where are you going to move him? First base or DH seems like a complete waste of that level of ability. If you move him to center field is a position that I think makes the most sense, but like I'd be curious what Nick and those guys say about the load. Is it really different? Is that a better bet to keep him healthy? It might be, but I don't know. Like center field for most guys would be an upgrade in the physical toll that it would take. I mean, remember when Whit Merrifield? I don't know how much. I think there was a little bit of PR in this, but remember Whit Merrifield last year, the year before, center field and the legs, we don't know, and all that stuff. I mean, that's kind of what we're dealing with, and we're talking about a guy with hamstring, groin, obliques, right? Both of them. I just don't know. But if sports science said, his specific body, and there's something about the injuries that have happened, and we think, just more straight line running, and less of the quick twitch, plant and go stuff would be an upgrade, then I think you'd have to do that. Especially in Witt Jr., I think presents him with that's a damn good safety net. If the reports are, and there's people that have seen him a lot more than us play shortstop. If they think he can really play big league shortstop, then sure. But if sports science says that, look, anything short of DH, it's not going to help him stay healthy. Mondesi's a better shortstop, according to the reports, defensively than Witt. So I would keep him there if he's not if it doesn't improve his health. Like that's the reason you move him.
I think center field would be the position.
That speed would play. The arm is plenty. Yeah.
But I also remember Kane getting hurt a lot.
Yep.
He was a guy that if we look back at the numbers when Kane was a full-time player for the Royals, probably missed as many games and. With hamstrings and muscle injuries.
Seems like his was always like stretching. He'd
first base.
Skip a step and like stretch his leg out. Maybe he needs to go to KCK and work with
Al Hobson.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's a great point. That's what Lorenzo Cain did. Helped him out.
Yeah.
Okay, let's. Mondesi can't dominate the entire conversation. I guess he can, but there are some other issues here, topics. Hey, the Royals have won 2 out of 3, right? 2 out of 3 from the Red Sox. Not too shabby. But one of those games, was it the first game of the series where they went with an opener?
Yeah, we had
That's a little different.
Kyle Zimmer, starting pitcher, which it was funny. I can't remember if it was the day after or it was one of the days right after that. He was walking through the dugout before the game, and I just said to him, I said, "Hey, there goes Kyle Zimmer, starting pitcher." And he looked up at me and said, "What year is it?"
Yeah. So go down the list. Who Bubic came in after. Zimmer went 2, Bubic 2 1/3, I think.
That sounds right. I know he came in after. I'm trying to forget how many innings he went. It might have been 2 1/3. Kowar pitched later. Was it that? I think it was the next game that I can't remember now. But Kowar pitched late in the game where he actually, the first inning was rough. Like there was 2 wild pitches. One of them I remember being a curveball that did not curve and went straight to the backstop in the air. But he actually got out of that inning without giving up a run, if I remember correct.
For the first time all year.
Yeah, and then he pitched a 1-2-3 inning for the first time all year the next inning. And I think it was one of the batters in the inning, I want to say was Rafael Devers, who had like a 960 OPS or something ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And so then he got to a 3rd inning, and that did not go quite as well. He ended up giving up a 2-run home run. But, I mean, considering he had 2 starts that went a combined 2 innings, and I forget what the number was. I want to say it was 8 runs. To see 2 innings plus of 2-run ball, and the two-run home run was the only thing, was, I guess, somewhat encouraging.
Yeah. I think Santana was part of it. He was part of this relay race.
Yeah, and the games are starting to run together.
Yeah,
but Bubic and Kowar are now available out of the bullpen. I'm sure it will still be some semi-regular days as far as when they pitch, and try to sort of simulate, okay, every 5th day with also a bullpen day. I don't think you'll see them back to back, but that's going to be how they sort of ease them in, and also limit the innings load that, guys who didn't have full seasons and have never pitched full seasons in the majors yet.
And Dayton talked about this a little bit yesterday, didn't he? We talked about, Adam Wainwright didn't come in and, wasn't a starter right away. And I remember he came in and was a great relief pitcher in 2006 when the Cardinals won the World Series, and Wainwright out of the bullpen, and I just thought, because you knew he was going to become a starter, and the Cardinals knew it, but he was tremendous as a relief pitcher. And he had some other examples of players who just weren't stars right away, as he was talking about the development of this team. And I think he had in mind the young pitchers, right? Lynch and Kowar especially. I kind of like the idea of getting him out of the starting leverage situation, and when Lynch returns, kind of easing him in. Don't you think, Sam, that could be a way to go for them?
The Royals and maybe all of the other 29 teams have had success doing it that way. It makes sense. Your stuff can play better. Your velocity can pick up, a tick or two, and you can max effort a little bit more and gain some confidence to get guys out. The example, Wainwright's a great one, because he was in some high leverage in the playoffs, right? As a reliever. I always think of Zach Greinke, maybe the best starting pitcher, probably the best starting pitcher this organization has ever developed. And his situation was a lot different for a lot of ways. But after he walked away, and he was killing people in Wichita, and he came up and transitioned as a relief pitcher, and it actually helped him in the long run. His velocity stayed pretty close to where it was. I'm not saying Zach's not normal,
Right.
Results, are not common here. But I think that there is a combination of actual physical, like, yes, I can get guys out, with this stuff, and I can trust this changeup in this situation and all that stuff. And the manager can massage it a little bit too. I mean, God, Matheny and Cal, they've got a lot of things to juggle. The workload from last year, everything that you just mentioned, every 5th day we got a long man, whatever. I mean, it's there's a lot going on there. But I do think that there's some value in getting these guys. They need confidence, and they're going to need the same thing from Lynch, of just, can I get guys out? Because they don't know that they can yet. That's something that is still to be learned. I actually remember, one of the things, I've been wrong about many things, right? But I was like, when Zach came back and was so good as a reliever, I'm kind of like, leave him there. You're finally getting something out of this guy. But obviously that would have been a stupid idea.
Well, one day we'll have the conversation about the best pitcher the Royals have ever developed.
Yeah.
Right. Greinke's a good one, but David Cohn is in that conversation.
Yeah. I mean,
Kevin Apier is in that conversation.
Zach will be. Maybe we'll save it for that show. But Zach will be the first Hall of Famer, right?
Yeah. Royals have not produced a Hall of Fame pitcher. Haven't
Drafted
developed
by the
it,
Royals.
Right? Cy Young
Yep.
winners, but
Sure.
not Hall of Fame pitchers.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. So. But in the meantime, they've got to come up with a rotation, and it's Brady Singer tonight against the Yankees. What's the rest of the rotation going to look like for this series?
Well, Wednesday is still technically up in the air. I mean, I think, and they haven't said this, and I did ask the other day, he said they were still deciding what was going to happen on Wednesday. It is, doing just, some amateur math. Friday was the day that I talked to Danny Duffy, and he pitched his live session, and now he's not fully stretched out. That session was 40 pitches is what he told me. But if I do Friday and I say, okay, the 5th day, that lines up. That lines up for Wednesday. He's not technically active yet. He did go on the last trip when he wasn't active, so I'm assuming he's traveling with them into New York. So if they were to activate him, I don't know if he'd be able to give you 60. It'd probably be, I don't know, 60 might be pushing it because he's pitched in live situation type things, but 40 pitches so far. But maybe there's some opener, or maybe he gives you something and you have somebody ready to do the piggyback type thing. When it's not entirely clear if they're still going to do the piggyback thing with Brady, because they did a piggyback thing his last start without apparently telling him that they were doing because he had a shoulder thing that he was working through. And again, he's one of those guys who pitched last year, but I think he's already at 13 or 14 starts this year, which is more than he made last year in that, in his first season in the big leagues. And so he had a shoulder thing, and they kept him to 3 innings his last start out. Talked to him the other day, and he said he was fine, but they didn't tell him he was going to be having a short outing, and so it's, again, like you said, lots of things to juggle. I mean, between the innings and who's going to have full starts, who's going to have abbreviated starts, and who's going to be the guys that ready to come in, whether that's, Carlos Hernandez, Irvin Santana, Bubic, and Kolar. We know that Singer's going to start. We don't know how long he's going to pitch tonight. We're not sure.
3 innings last game.
Yeah, we're not sure who's going to start tomorrow. And then we know Keller's going to go on Thursday. And for right now, Keller and Minor are the guys that they're just going to lean on and say, we need you to get as deep into this game as you can. And sometimes that works for those guys, but we've also seen times with Keller where that hasn't necessarily, he's been better lately as far as that, but that could get dicey depending on the day too.
Yep.
Third time through the lineup's been tough for Keller recently.
Yeah.
It's so I always kind of think of him. Maybe he's miscast. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see. But that third time through the lineup's been tough.
And it seems like that's a thing that's been amplified lately. Like his first year or two, it seemed like he was able to go 6-7. Not every game. Few people do that. But there's something lately that's just been a little bit off on that. And the Royals are a lot more analytical, with this stuff, with their bullpen decisions than they used to be. I think Matheny has really bought in, and that stuff is used a lot more. I think Ned was always given the information, and sometimes he'd use it, but sometimes I think, go with the gut, match them up. That's what match them up, and they won the World Series. So.
All right, they're hitting better with runners in scoring position, at least against the Red Sox, or they're scoring.
Well, I was going to say they actually hit with runners.
Right.
So any hitting was better than
what they were getting. And we'll end on this: is Salvador Perez the Royals' lone All-Star, or is there a second All-Star candidate from this team?
At this point, I'd say he's the lone All-Star. I would, and it was going to be hard, but the guy who I thought maybe had a shot was Benintendi, just because his numbers were really starting to pick up. But in the outfield, it's always tough too. So at this point, I think Witt's in the top 5 at second base, but Salvi, I think Salvi's among the top vote getters in the majors right now.
He was third.
So,
Overall?
At least the last update I saw, yeah.
And a couple years ago, he was the top vote getter.
Yeah, it was like Acuna and somebody else that was above him. That was it.
He is, again, we talk a lot about Salvi and what's down the road for him, but he's found a new. He's a different hitter.
He really is.
He just is. I still think he hasn't been great with runners in scoring position, but nobody has really.
Yeah.
But his numbers, 18 home runs, not at the midway point. He's on pace for about 40.
It's bonkers.
Yeah, at one point they were, and I'm not sure this is dated. At one point I think they were saying he was on pace for like 42, which would, only be behind Soler's 48 from 48 or 49? 49 from a couple of years ago, as far as the most in the single season franchise history. And this is from a guy who's a catcher every day. And that's the other thing is, I wrote about this a couple weeks back, but he still played every game so far this season.
Every single game.
Either between catcher and DH.
Yeah.
And he says he wants to play all 160. And we'll see as far as injuries. Catcher's so hard to predict that he's going to be, whether it's a foul ball off the mask or something like that. But he's been in the lineup every day, and they've needed him in the lineup every day.
He's had some late season fades in the past when he's, sort of played a little bit too much. But this is, I don't know if the numbers would back me up on this, but I would imagine that this is the most he's DH'd, through 70 games.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a way to keep him fresh. But he's also, normal rules don't necessarily apply to that guy. You know what I mean? He is different because guys don't have their best seasons at, is he 31, 32?
He's
Somewhere
31.
31.
I think in May, I want to say his birthday's in May. I want to say he
Yeah.
turned 31 in May.
And this is his
crazy.
11th. I think it's his 11th season.
Yeah. But if you look in it, we're talking about like fractions here, but Salvi's never going to be, Kevin Youkilis, right? But his pitches per plate appearance have increased every year since I think either 2014 or 2015. I don't know if his walks have necessarily, but he's at least being a little bit more patient. I think that's been a key to his success the last couple seasons.
One thing when you consider a Hall of Fame candidate, you consider the position, right? He's not going to have overall numbers that equal to some of the best hitters in the game, but among catchers, he's going to be terrific.
Yeah.
And I looked at this just recently. I was looking at Joe Mauer's career numbers, and Salvy's already, I think, caught as many games as Mauer. Mauer moved injuries; he moved him to first base. And Minnesotans think that Mauer should be a Hall of Famer and make the case for that. And I mean, Salvy's on a path to pass Joe Mauer's numbers. So
that's going to be a hell of an interesting debate. Is Joe Mauer's Hall of Fame? Because is he a catcher? Is he a first baseman? Is he a DH? He won two batting titles, right?
He did.
I don't know. That's going to be a really interesting debate.
And Salvy's got the Gold Gloves.
Silver Sluggers. You got five. And Mauer was a great defensive catcher as well when he was catching. So, okay, we'll end it there. Great to have Sam Mellinger and Lynn Worthy in studio. In studio.
How about that?
That's fantastic. And Beth, of course, is our producer, does a fantastic job. Thanks to the University of Kansas Health System sponsoring this show, and we will talk to you again next Tuesday. Thanks a lot.